Hey, Stephen Whittier here, Chief Instructor of SBG East Coast. I want to jump on real quick and just address something that happened to a family member of one of my longtime students. I'm always cautious about sharing a story like this, like a self-defense case study or testimonial that happened with one of our members, because I don't like to portray it as fear-mongering to make people feel like the purpose of this is to scare you into learning martial arts. But it is also important, and this one is relevant to anyone who's interested in learning self-defense and self-protection, but more importantly, and more specifically, this goes out to fellow parents, because this is honestly why my own daughter learns martial arts, or at least one of the reasons. The benefits extend far beyond the physical, obviously, but in terms of just knowing that later on, when I can't be there all the time, and wanting her to have not only the confidence that gets conveyed on an unspoken level, but also the actual capacity to be able to defend herself against somebody who might have bad intentions that is bigger and stronger. So my student, some years ago, longtime student, very close to me, moved to another country. His daughter, if you were to see her, actually does runway modeling and fashion modeling. She's very petite, very small, and just recently I found out that she was assaulted. And she was assaulted by a full-grown older man in a social setting who had way too much to drink, and basically it was very bad. Like, without going into too many details, not only was he manhandling her forcefully, but trying to pull her hair out, he actually bit her, and it was very ugly. It could have gotten much, much worse. What ultimately happened was, because she had years of training under her dad, who was a coach with me and then went on to teach in the country that they went on to reside in, and so she was a student of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, she was able to actually take her much larger, older, full-grown male attacker down and get into what we call the mounted position, one of the most dominant positions in all of martial arts. And then she was able to start attacking his arms, kind of tying them up and going for submission attempts, which put him on the defensive, and she was able to use her weight so he couldn't force her off. He was too busy defending. And then she was able ultimately to find the opening to get out of there, escape the situation, call the police. Now, this goes right to the heart of the matter. A lot of times I hear two things when it comes to self-defense, especially as it relates to women. So on the one extreme, there's a lot of women, or parents of girls who will ultimately become women, of course, that have this opinion that all they need is like an attitude, and that nobody will mess with them, and they have sort of this false sense of the physical, material realities of how quickly things can go downhill, and they think that they can do maybe physically more than they actually can. And a lot of times when they're put in a situation in a controlled environment where they start training, they're kind of shocked at how easily they can be physically controlled when somebody has a little bit of intention behind their physicality that is bigger and stronger, especially a male. On the far other side of the spectrum, we have situations where it's sort of fatalistic, and I've had this discussion with people in my own immediate family where they say, do you really think that in that situation she would be able to do anything if a guy was really trying to control her physically? And my answer is, I know this to be true because I have not only this most recent case, but I have multiple, quite a few others, both from people who have been in those experiences that were my students, and also fellow coaches who have trained people who have had these experiences. It is not a situation where it's always a bigger, stronger male going into a mixed martial arts fight with a small woman, or jumping out of the bushes in a full-blown, like, blindsiding assault. Most cases, it's somebody that you know, as this happens to be, and they're going to try and be physically controlling you, so assaulting you, but a lot of times controlling you. And when you have a trained response, when you have those years of experience, even at a huge physical disadvantage, you have a technical advantage when you really understand these martial arts, and you understand how to apply them for self-defense situations, which not all Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu instructors focus on that. They focus more on the competitive side. And we like to make sure that we have a base here at SBG where our students have the full spectrum, everything from the self-defense component, specifically different types of self-defense situations, all the way through to the sports side of the art. And it's all encompassing. So I highly encourage you not to be fatalistic, but also to be realistic about these things and realize this is one of the best things you could do, not only for yourself, of course, but also for your child. And although the chances in today's modern society are very small that you're going to be, singled out and attacked, it's still, I've had many people who have been in these situations and either were able, through some non-physical means through their training, to preempt the situation from escalating, but they also were prepared for that time when it did happen to them. And this was a perfect example, and I'm very glad that my good friend and longtime student's daughter was able to get away from that situation safely.